Hey guys. Okay, so it was a crazy week. It's going into Pesach. My wife just gave birth, and yeah, there's just a lot of factors flying around. So I wasn't able to do the recording as I was hoping to. Baruch Hashem, two of my kids are sleeping right now. Everyone else is out of the house. So please pray with me together that I'm going to be able to do this recording for you guys and for myself. Hashem, please connect us to all the true tzaddikim of the generation, all the true tzaddikim who are buried in the earth, and to the tzaddik Yisur Olam, to the Nachal, Naveh, Makor Hochma, Rabbi Nachman and Fega, that we should really get exactly what we need to hear before Pesach, that we could wipe our slate clean and remove all the chametz, remove all the foreign thoughts and negative thinking, and transform Bezrat Hashem. So before we move forward in the story, I just want to clarify one thing because there was a lot of questions about this, and I'm trying to bring it down as simply as possible. I know this is a very difficult concept when it comes to Kabbalah. Chassidut utilizes it only in order to come out with practical advice about how to transform my life. However, still sometimes the concepts are difficult enough that you have to really meditate on it. So I was trying to think of what is a good parallel, what's a good way to understand in like the physical world, why it is that when I rely on simple faith, I get to experience Hashem's compassion and empathy more than if I just learn Torah, or I try to know Hashem exclusively, or I operate on the level of knowledge of Hashem instead of operating on the level of simple faith. Okay, so let's look again together at the 10 Sefirot. So we start with Keter. Keter is called the unknowable head. Keter is completely superconscious. We can't fathom it at all. Keter means the crown. Keter in Latin is actually, I believe it's corona, which is fascinating, and all of the rabbis try to darshan on this. So when it comes to Chassidut, many times they don't start with Keter in the 10 Sefirot, partly because it's unknowable, and the other reason is usually the 10 Sefirot that the Chassidut is dealing with is the 10 Sefirot of Zer Anpin and Nukva. And in the 10 Sefirot of Zer Anpin, there actually is no Keter, so to speak. It's just Chochmah Bina Da'at, okay? So that's just for the people who want to know more. On a very simple level, we're going to start now from Chochmah, okay? Chochmah means wisdom. Bina means understanding. Da'at means knowledge. Chesed is kindness. Gevura is discipline or strength. Tiferet is beauty. Netzach is prevailing, enduring. Hod is splendor or majesty. Yesod is the foundation. And Malchut is kingship. These are the 10 Sefirot that we're going to be dealing with throughout all of the stories of Rabbi Nachman and all of the lessons of Chassidut. Because what is Chassidut again? We just have to keep hammering this home. Chassidut, the Chiddush of Chassidut was, it took the Kabbalah of the Arizal, which was something unbelievable, something wondrous, novelties in understanding not just Torah but also Kabbalah in ways in which was never expressed in history. And then the Baal Shem Tov took it and brought it down into practical Jewish life, to the extent that whatever you do according to the Hasidic masters, when you follow their advice and you learn their Torah, you are affecting what's called yichudim. You are causing supernal unifications, which only in the past Kabbalists were capable of doing. But the Mashiach told the Baal Shem Tov that when all the Jewish people are capable of doing yichudim like you, are capable of making unifications like you, I'm gonna come, okay? Now, so what did the Baal Shem Tov do? Because he was flabbergasted. How could it be that all the Jewish people, even people who are working most of the day, let's say in our generation, all of our Balei Tshuva that are coming back at the end of time, they don't even know Hebrew, Aramaic. How are they going to start doing Kabbalistic unifications? So the Baal Shem Tov took all of his knowledge of the Arizal and he drew it down into action, to the extent that when you follow any advice of Rabbi Nachman, you're doing a yichud. You're doing what the Kabbalists of Tzfat were doing 600 years ago in caves and in the forests and in woods and in the Beit Midrash, looking at all the different names of Hashem, and they were doing it through meditative practices. And the Baal Shem Tov's novelty was that through his system of connecting to Hashem, which obviously Rabbi Nachman is the Hasidic master that we're focusing on, drawing into our life, his teachings, because of how much they resonate with us, this specific generation, right before the Mashiach comes. So every time that you do them, let's say you do Hibodedut, and you talk to Hashem for an hour, you're doing Yechudim. Let's say, for instance, you're getting up for Tikkun Chatzot in the morning, you're doing Yechudim. When you dance and clap your hands while connecting to Hashem, you're doing Yechudim, and you don't know you're doing all these things. But all the Hasidic masters know this, the Baal Tanya and the Noam Elimelech and Rabbi Nachman and Breslov and all the different Hasidic masters and all of their branches which flows out from the tree of the Baal Shem Tov. That's all of them. That's all of their practices is doing that, okay? So therefore, we need to understand the 10 Sfirot at a very basic level, because we're constantly working with them, even though we don't realize it. Keter is called the unknowable head, but we don't deal with it, because it's not at the level of action. Where do we begin with at the level of action? It's called Chokhmah. Chokhmah means wisdom, but very simply for us, it represents the light of Hashem. The light of Hashem. What does it say about the light in Pirkei Avot? The light is Tov, it's good. What else does it say about the light? The light is Torah. What else do we know about the light? The light heals. What else do we know about the light? When a person has Chokhmah, Tichye, it gives him life. It gives life. So pretty much every single thing that we want in our life, whether it's wisdom, whether it's healing, whether it's joy, whether it's life force, every single thing that we're looking for is coming from the sphere of Chokhmah. However, Rabbi Nachman explains in the first Torah of Likutei Moharan that Chokhmah is like the light of the sun. And therefore, even though it's what everything in creation needs, it's one of the few things that we can't look directly at. So it's a paradox. On the one hand, the very thing that we need is the light of God. But on the other hand, we can't experience the light of God because it's too intense. All the 10 Sfirot are mitigating this light, contracting this light of Chokhmah until it comes down to Malchut. Once it gets through this final sphere of Malchut, and you can imagine, let's say, window panels, right? Let's say you have the light from outside. You can't look directly at the sun. But let's say going into a building, you have 10 mirrors. The first mirror is completely clear. So the light that comes through is the same exact light as the light that's from the sun. However, when it comes through this clear panel, even though it's so minute, it's so small, it's so imperceptible, you cannot perceive the difference between the light from before the mirror till after the panel, but still, because it's coming through a panel, to whatever degree, it's been mitigated. The light is not as intense. And then it goes through another panel. This panel is not as translucent as the first panel. This panel is now a little bit thicker and more coarse, and so on and so forth. So this light, we're going to say the light of God, then is channeled through 10 panels. Each panel is thicker and more coarse than the one before it. So we're going from Chokhmah, Bina, Da'at, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut. This light is being channeled through those 10 panels. And then by the time it gets to Malchut, Malchut is black. So what's the benefit of it getting down to the final panel? Because Malchut is black and dark, when the light goes through this black panel, we can look directly at it because it's dark light. So it maintains the benefit of being light, but it's dark enough that we can look directly at it. It's like sunglasses, okay? Okay. So the light that we're trying to receive is the light of Chokhmah. But the light of Chokhmah, Rabbi Nachman explains in the first lesson of Likutei Moharan, we cannot look directly at. So how do we get to experience it? In the story of the lost princess, the king is Chokhmah. And so far we know that the Chokhmah, the king, has 6 sons and 1 daughter. These 6 sons represent Chesed, Gevur, Tiferet, Netzach, Chod, Yesod, the 6 lower emotional sfirot, or emotive sfirot. And these are corresponding very simply, according to the Perush, the explanation that we're learning to, knowledge of God. Or, even more simply than that, Torah knowledge, okay? Torah knowledge. So what would be included in Torah knowledge? When I read the Parsha this week in the Chumash, that's Torah knowledge. When I know that Moshe Rabbeinu took the Jews out of Mitzrayim, that's Torah knowledge. How about, let's add halacha. I know Pesach's coming up. I'm not allowed to eat chametz. That's Torah knowledge. On Pesach, the entire Chag, you're not allowed to have chametz in your house. You're not allowed to see chametz. These are different dinim. These are different laws in Pesach. You are not allowed to. These not allowed tos and allowed tos, none of that makes sense, but you're with me. All the allowed tos and not allowed tos in the Torah are the 6 sons. All the knowledge of the Parshiot that you learn in the Chumash, Torah knowledge. And let's say you learn Shas, you learn Gemara, you're learning a back and forth dialectical intellectual fight in order to draw out a truth. And you're learning Gemara like that. Torah knowledge. All of this is the 6 sons. 6 sons. And then all of a sudden, the king has a daughter. There's not 6 of them, there's 1 of them. What is this daughter? This daughter is called Emunah. Simple faith. The faith that a child has in their parents. The faith that a child has when they're raised, like right now, Baruch Hashem, we're teaching our kids about Hashem, believing in Hashem, trusting in Hashem. Last night, for instance, my daughter, she had a nightmare. And when she woke up, it's amazing. I get to keep using her as examples for simple faith. Baruch Hashem, thank God. My prayers are coming true. Bli Ein Hara. Okay, so when Eden Rachel goes to sleep, she wouldn't sleep last night. She had a nightmare, very bad nightmare. She woke up in the middle of the night and she said, Abba, Abba, Abba. So I run in and she says, I had a nightmare. And I said, oh, hey, what happened? She said, and she told me. It was actually pretty scary. So I go, okay, don't worry, you're not going to have bad dreams anymore. She goes, Abba, I know why I had a bad dream. I said, why? She said, because I didn't say Shema good. So I said, okay, so let's say it together now. So she sat up with me. We did it nicely. Usually she's playing around when I'm saying Shema with my kids, or she's laying down, or she's just not really focusing on it. But because my wife told her that when you say Shema good, you don't have nightmares, she remembered that, and she believes that, and it is true. And she's not sophisticated yet. Bezrat Hashem, she'll never be sophisticated, because even now, today, I'm working on this Indian of saying Shema before I go to sleep, because according to Kabbalah, it really does prevent from bad dreams, okay? So we say Shema together, and she went to sleep. That's called the princess. She had simple faith in what my wife told her. That when you say Shema before you go to sleep at night, and you say it good, you don't have bad dreams. She's right. Okay, that's the That's the daughter. According to the Sfirot, this is the lowest Sfirot of Malchut. That's the black panel. Why is it a black panel? It's black because there's no extraneous thought process there. There's no trying to figure out something deeper than what is. There's no adding to or taking away from a simple reality. It just, this is it, and I believe it, okay? That's called the Malchut, that's called the Muna, that's the princess in the story. So why is she black? Because she doesn't have any extraneous thought. She's not sophisticated. She's simple. She's straightforward. She's authentic. She's genuine. We've learned so far in this story that the king, meaning Chochmah, the light of Hashem, which is too intense for us to stare at, he loves his daughter. He cherishes his daughter. He gets nachat ruach. He gets such joy and simcha from his daughter. He hangs out a lot with his daughter. That's what we learned so far together. It doesn't say anything about his sons. Why is Chochmah, the light of Hashem, the source of healing, the source of joy, the source of life force, the source of higher consciousness? Why is he hanging out with the daughter, meaning simple faith, straightforward, genuine, unpretentious, nothing extraneous, nothing sophisticated? Why is he with her and he's not with Torah knowledge? He's not with halakha, he's not with Jewish law, he's not with Gemara, he's not with the Chumash, he's not with, even in Kabbalah, he's not with the different principles of the Kabbalistic Sfirot. He's not with any of those things. He's only loves and cherishes and wants to hang out with his daughter, simple faith. Why? Okay. And what we've explained, and this is based on the first Torah in Likutei Moharan, the light of Chochmah, because it's so intense, it doesn't reach its expression in which we can experience it until it gets through Malchut, the final sphere. Very simply put, the king, right, when you want to go see the king, nobody can see the king. He's in his own chambers. So nobody gets to be let into them. Only when the king comes out, you can see him. So what does the king have to do for you to see him? He has to put on many levels of clothes. He comes out with his royal garb. He comes out with his throne. Sorry, his throne. He comes out with his crown. He comes out with his, that silver stick thing that they hold. And he comes out with the whole garb. Now, after he comes out with the whole garb, you can see him. But he only comes out to see certain people that work for him, certain people that he trusts, certain people he believes in. Those certain people are the ones who are his loyal, faithful servants, okay? If you're not a loyal, faithful servant, he doesn't come out to see you, and you can't go into his chamber. You can't see the king as he really is. You have to see him when he comes out in all of his garb. And then he can be experienced. But even then, he only shows himself to certain people. Those people who he knows are loyal and faithful and genuine and straightforward and believe in him. Okay? So the king, again, is the light of Chochmah. The light of Chochmah is too intense for us to look at. So Rabbi Nachman explains, how do we experience the light of Chochmah? Same way we experience the light of the sun at night, only through the moon. And the Zohar says the moon, there's no light, migarma klum, there's no light of its own. It has no light of its own. Because it has no light of its own, it can receive the light of the sun perfectly and reflect it out at nighttime so you can look directly at it. Okay, beautiful. So here's the kasha. In our world, our whole world is called nighttime by the sages. So we're in a bit of a pickle. And according to Chazal, right before Mashiach comes, which we're for sure there. So this is the darkest part of nighttime. So if there's only nighttime stam in this world, and we're at the end of history where it's the darkest part of night, so then how can we possibly experience the light of the sun? There is no sun in this world. It's only nighttime. But we need light because the light gives clarity, because the light is healing, because the light is joyful, because the light gives life force. How do I get the light at nighttime in the darkest part of night? Through the moon. The moon is symbolized by Malchut. Malchut is that final black panel, the one that has no light of its own. That's why it's black. But that's its perfection. Because it has no light of its own, it can receive all of the light of the sun and can give off faithfully that exact light, but in a contracted form so that everybody's able to benefit it, put simply, like the light of the moon at nighttime. But because we're in the midst of the darkest part of night, and because this whole world is called nighttime, nobody can see the sun. So who's the ones who's able to be alive even in the exile? The ones who can make themselves like a moon. Those people that can make themselves like a moon, they can receive the very light of the sun, but in its contracted form, so that it's beneficial for them, so that it helps them grow, so it helps them progress. It doesn't take away their free will. It doesn't take away their bechira. It doesn't take away their growth, but it does give them enough light that they're able to be happy, that they're able to be excited, that they're able to be joyful, that they're able to be alive. They're able to have clarity. So now come back with me. The king has 6 sons and 1 daughter. If you can imagine, the 6 sons are like stars, and the moon is like the daughter. The stars are just like the sun, except they're at nighttime and they're further away. Because they're further away, I'm able to look at them. And they have a light of their own. Because the 6 sons, meaning Torah knowledge, has a light of its own, it's something that we crave, and it's something that we need. However, on the other hand, because it has the light of its own, it's not able to give over the light of the sun, because these stars are like their own little suns. However, for us to heal and for us to be happy and for us to grow closer to Hashem, little stars are not going to cut it. The only way for us to transform psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, physically, is only through the light of the sun. It's only through the king. And for that, stars are not going to cut it. We're going to need the light of the sun itself. And there's only one thing that reflects the light of the sun itself. That is the light of the moon. The moon is a Muna. Now, a person is scared to look at the moon. A person is scared to trust the light of the moon. Why? It has no light of its own. How can I rely on something which has no light of its own? But when you understand that the moon is the perfect keli, the perfect vessel to receive the light of Chokhmah, then you can begin to cultivate a very deep relationship with Malchut, with Amuna, with the princess. And this is the reason why the king loves the princess. And this is the reason why the king is exclusively with the princess. The same reason that the light of the sun is only with the moon and isn't with the stars. And even though the stars are amazing and they're beautiful to look at, and we need them, especially spiritually, we need Torah knowledge. We need it. On the other hand, the pathway towards the king's light, the pathway towards Chokhmah, the pathway towards the light of the infinite one, that light which is going to bring personal transformation and redemption for each of us and collective redemption, the one that's going to very simply heal us, that can only be found with the moon. That can only be found with the princess. That's why he loves hanging out with her, because she's the only one who has no light of its own, and therefore reflects the light of the king. And because he can reveal himself through her and not through his sons, he loves spending time with her. I know I just spent 25 minutes on that, but it's crucial and fundamental, not just for this lesson, for all of Rabbi Nachman's stories, and for all of Rabbi Nachman's lessons, and for everything that the Baal Shem Tov and all the Hasidic masters worked and toiled towards till this day to give to us, is based on everything we discussed for the past 25 minutes. And therefore, when you see Hasidim, and it seems like they have cut themselves off from normative thinking, or they have like cut themselves off from normative society, or they seem to be like in a world of their own, or when you see them daven and they pray with such fervor and they pray with such intensity, and when you ask them questions, obviously this is a general klal, not everybody fits in here, and just because a person wears Hasidic garb doesn't mean they're like this. But if a person is really raised with the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, of Rabbi Nachman, of Hasidus, they could be just as knowledgeable in Torah, but it will not come at the sake of the lost princess. It will not come at the sake of Emunah. It won't come at the sake of the moon. They will not confuse the stars with the moon. They'll make sure that they're always receiving light from the moon, and therefore they're not sophisticated, and they're not pretentious, and they're not interested in engaging in anything which would cause them to move into the realm of extraneous knowledge, because this would take away from that childlike innocence which allows you to receive the light of the sun, which is the light of healing, which is the light of faith. Okay, and if you guys have any questions about that, please send it out as well. And with that, now we'll move forward in the story. Mais b'melech echad. There was one king, shayu lo shisha banim uvat echad, 6 sons and 1 daughter. Ve'ota bat hayata chashuva be'enav me'od. And this daughter was very precious to the king. Vaya mechavva beyoter. In fact, more precious than the other sons. Vaya mishashea ima me'od. And he delighted in her very much. This is what we did so far. Now we're going to move forward. Ba'am echad, one time, hayamit va'ed ima biyachad be'eza yom. He was alone with her one day. V'nasa berogez aleha. And he became angry at her. V'niz rakam yipiv dibur. And he threw from his mouth dibur. He threw from his mouth speech. Shalat tov yikach otach. That the no good one should take her. Here we have the beginning of the drama of this story. So far, everything is beautiful, wondrous, peaches and cream. However, we're beginning to experience the exile of the princess. The commentator of this sefer is going to analyze each of the details here, which is unbelievable and very necessary for unearthing a lot of the jewels that are here that maybe even in other Perushim you won't see. Because everything Rabbi Nachman said was bidiuk, it was exact. So when a person knows that, just like in a Gemara, they're not going to take any word for granted. They're going to learn something from each thing and expound from each thing. Pa'am echad, one time, haya mitva'ed ima biyachad be'eza yom. He was alone with her one day. So now listen to what he says. Lo mevo'or kan ech mitoch hitva'ut v'kiruv ha'gadol shehu biyachad. It's not explained here why it was dafka when he was alone with her he got angry at her. V'nizrak mipiv dibur chamur kazeh. And he threw from his mouth a very harsh speech, because we know that Chazal explained that there's different terms of speech. There's amira, there's dibur, right? There's hagid, gid, to speak like that. So there's different lashonot, there's different ways to speak. Each of them is a different level of intensity of speech, and it's trying to convey a different thing. At the level of dibur, Chazal say in the Midrashim, and Rashi brings this many times in his commentary to the Torah, dibur is harsh speech. It's intense speech. It's emphatic speech. So when it says that from his mouth came out dibur, that already is saying something, meaning he's angry at her, and his anger is manifesting in dibur when he says that the no good one should take you away. So all of a sudden, everything is like wondrous and beautiful and fantastic. And then like in one moment, something happens. The king gets angry at his daughter, and he throws from his mouth very intense, very emphatic, very harsh speech that the one who's not good should take her. But it doesn't explain why they were so close at the time that this happened. So this is very interesting. V'nir libe'era inyan. We need to see what's the explanation of this. Ki yesh l'Hashem Yiparach shtei hanhagot. For Hashem Yiparach, the sages, the Chachamim, explain that Hashem orchestrates reality using two modes of conduct. One of those modes is called rachamim, empathy, compassion, kindness, love. And the other one is called din. Din refers to severity, constrictedness, constriction. We're going to see in a second what these mean. Hanhaga Ragila, what's the normative mode of operation? What is Hashem's normative way of dealing with his creations, with us? Hu hanagata din, it's through din. Why? Shebahu dan et adam lefi ma'asav. Because he judges a person according to his actions, what he does, what she does. She'im osem mitzvah mishalem lo schar. A person does a mitzvah, Hashem gives him equally some type of positive consequence. V'im oseh avera, and if a person does something which is against the dictates of the Torah, noten lo onesh, he has some type of negative consequence. Mida keneged mida. Like the sages have said for thousands of years, this principle of mida keneged mida. Just like you do, you receive. Is Hashem narrow-minded, chas v'shalom? Is Hashem very fickle? And why is he so tit for tat in doing this? The reason has nothing to do with Hashem, how he is in his essence. The reason is because Hashem wanted to give us an opportunity to be co-creators with him. And also to receive all of the good. And according to the Zohar, the way that we receive all of the good is not getting it for free. Because when a person gets free bread, the Zohar explains, it's not like a person that he works for it. When a person works for that bread, he enjoys it much, much more, infinitely more, than a person who gets it for free. So as a result of that, Hashem created a system, even though, so to speak, kivyachol, it's not in Hashem's nature to be like this, but so as to allow for us to experience our own zchut, our own merits from what we do, which will be all of our pleasure, both in this world and in the world to come. So he created a system or a hanhaga of din, a hanhaga of mida keneged mida, a modus operandi of how you act is determining the consequences that result from your actions. But there is a hanhaga, there is a mode of operation that Hashem has, that he utilizes, which is higher than din, which is higher than justice, which is higher than mida keneged mida. Ayadem midot harachamim. That's his quality of empathy and compassion. It's higher. It's closer to him. It's nearer to Hashem. It's more essential. Shesham HaKadosh Baruch Hu merachem al adam. That there Hashem has compassion, he has empathy on a person. V'afilo shechate, even a person that he does averot, even a person that he does sins, even a person he transgresses what the Torah says. Hu mashpia lo tova bracha, he still gives him good and blessing. How does Hashem ever give everybody in the world all of these things, right? Even people who completely do things which are antithetical to the Torah. The answer is because it's coming from his quality of rachamim, Because if it was coming from his quality of din, it would be impossible for him to give good or blessing to anybody unless they deserved it. Where do we learn about this? It says in Sefer Shemot, V'chanoti et asher achon, and this is something that Rabbi Nachman stressed all of the time, and I'm going to tell you how he stressed it in a second. There's a pasuk when Moshe is advocating for the Jewish people, and Hashem explains to Moshe when it seems like Moshe doesn't understand how Hashem could help them at this point, because according to Din, which is all Moshe had understood from Hashem up until now, that's how he connected to Hashem, because he was oriented towards judgment in that way. How Hashem could help Bnei Yisrael when we didn't deserve it. Okay, and this is part of the secret of why Moshe didn't want to redeem us when Hashem asked him to, because the Midrash says, he said we didn't deserve it, so how can Hashem help us if we didn't deserve it? And also later on, when we made certain errors, collective errors, huge errors, and even though we know many times when Moshe advocated and fought for us, it's only after he understood from Hashem this principle, that Hashem had to tell Moshe that I have compassion on who I want to have compassion on, and I have empathy for who I want to have empathy for. This is a pasuk from the Torah. And here Hashem was explaining to Moshe, it's true. There is a system of actions and consequences that I created in the world, and that is my normal mode of operation with creation. However, Hashem told Moshe, but when I want to, I'll do whatever I want. And if I want to have compassion for a person, I'll do it. And if I want to have empathy for a person, I'll do it. And even if they don't deserve it, I'm going to help them anyway because of my compassion, because of my empathy. And once Moshe understood that this was actually closer and nearer to Hashem, for the rest of his life, he was always trying to placate and trying to cause an arousal of this higher quality of rachamim, and not this quality of din, this quality of judgment. And this is why when people came to Rabbi Nachman and he was trying to explain to them that it doesn't matter what you have done in your life, you just start over again and you pray to Hashem and you do your very best. A person might say to himself, well, what's the use? I mean, think about us as Balei Tshuva, how much we've done in our life. And let's say you might say, well, even during that time, I didn't even know Hashem. I didn't know the Torah. Okay, so we'll judge ourselves favorably. Good. So we're Makayiming one of Rabbi Nachman's advice. But even afterwards that we did know, we still weren't able to do it. We're still struggling with it. So really, according to the Hanhaga of Din, Hashem, theoretically couldn't help us or shouldn't help us. But there's a higher quality, that which the tzaddik knows about, the quality of rachamim, that he really, really, really deeply internalized. And this Rabbi Nachman was telling his disciples, us. When Hashem wants, he'll do whatever he wants. It's true. There is a normative framework which Hashem placed into the world called din, called teva, called nature, called action consequence. However, if you can present yourself in a way in which that you are arousing Hashem's quality of rachamim, his rachamim always supersedes judgment, din. So if you're able to awaken Hashem's compassion or his empathy, then it doesn't matter what you have done, and Hashem will have compassion on you, and he'll have empathy for you. And this is how you see so many people grow through different advice of Rabbi Nachman. That's what we're going to get to in a second, because all of Rabbi Nachman's advice is arousing Hashem's rachamim, Hashem's compassion. And like it says in Masechet Brachot, what does it mean when Hashem tells Moshe, I'm going to have compassion on who I want to have compassion on, or who I'm going to have compassion on? Because it's very ambiguous. Right? It says in Masechet Brachot, Zion, Afal Pisha Ein Hagun, even though they're not fitting. They don't deserve it. This is simply what he's saying. They don't deserve it, and yet I'm still going to help them. So pray to me. Don't stop praying to me. So now we have another additional branch which comes out from these trees that we've been building, okay? We've discussed so far how the sons are corresponding to Torah knowledge, specific, distinct, individual pieces of light like stars. And then we have the daughter, which is simple faith, which is like the moon, which has no light of its own. This is so far how we have described the sons, 6 sons and the 1 daughter. However, now the Mechaber is explaining that they actually also correspond to Midat Hadin versus Midat Harachamim. And here this point is very fundamental. Where does Midat Hadin come from? Midat Hadin comes from the 6 sons, comes from the Torah. That's why the Torah is filled with dinim. It's filled with laws. It's filled with judgments. Right after we receive the Torah, what's the next parsha? Mishpatim, judgments. Why? Because the Torah is contracting the light of Hashem so that we can experience it. However, the contracted light that we get is mitigated, and it's narrow. That narrowness is what allows and creates the 613 mitzvot. It's what creates pieces of Torah knowledge. Those are the 6 sons. So according to the Torah, there is action and consequence. According to the Torah, there is I do, and there is a reciprocal, equal, and opposite effect, whether it's positive or negative. That's all according to the Torah, meaning the 6 sons. But now, according to the daughter, according to simple faith, according to straightforward, genuine, unsophisticated belief in Hashem that He's my Father above all else, even above the laws of the Torah, that He loves me with a greater love than is dictated by the laws of justice. Then once I am living with the princess or the daughter, simple faith, now all of a sudden Hashem switches His mode of conduct with me. And it's no longer based on justice, but it's based on empathy, compassion. Compassion means even though I'm not deserving, even though I haven't yet achieved a certain level, even though blah, 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 and you fill in the rest, Hashem's going to help me anyway because He loves me. Period. Stam. That's it. Who gets to experience that one? The person who believes in the daughter, the person who lives with the daughter. So here is the very, very important point. This is why that emunah, why simple faith is so emphasized and stressed in the teachings of Chassidus, and then to the nth degree in Rabbi Nachman's Torah, that the greatest genius in Jewish history stressed simple, unsophisticated faith like a child. Why? Because when a person has faith like that, like a little child, like my daughter, who felt that maybe I had a bad dream because I didn't say Shema good, and not because I didn't get enough sleep, not because of something that happened during the day, not because blah, 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 all these different other sophisticated reasons for why I had a bad dream. I had a bad dream because Hashem wanted me to have a bad dream, but Hashem loves me and Hashem's my Abba, so let me show Him that I miss Him and that I care about Him and I want to do what He wants me to do. And then He has rachamim for me. And then He has empathy for me when I act like that. So very simply, we know that Rabbi Nachman explains that there's 2 states of reality. There's called Chutz La'aretz and there's Eretz Yisrael. There's outside of the land and there's in the land itself. The Gemara says that when a person lives outside of the land of Israel, it's like he doesn't have a God. When a person lives in Eretz Yisrael, it's like he has a God. So this needs more explanation, because many Jewish people, many religious Jewish people, many people who have Yirat Shamayim do not live in Eretz Yisrael. So how could they go against this Gemara? And the answer is that Eretz Yisrael is a state of consciousness, and Chutz La'aretz is a state of consciousness. What does it mean to live in Eretz Yisrael? To live with the daughter. When a person has simple faith, it's like he has a God. When a person does not have simple, unsophisticated, unpretentious belief in Hashem, even if he learns Torah day and night, the Gemara is saying it's like Ki'ilu, he doesn't have a God. Why? Because he doesn't experience Hashem's empathy. He only experiences Hashem's Mida Keneged Mida. And this is why you will see many times people learn day and night and they don't look happy. Why don't they look happy? Because it's explained according to Kabbalah. They're busy with dinim, they're busy with laws, they're busy with constrictions, they're busy with justice. So when a person's always busy with narrowness, he only gets to experience Hashem in a narrow way, even though it's Hashem's Torah, and even though it's perfect, and even though we need it. And that's why the Torah can never be outside of Eretz Yisrael. It has to always be in the land, even when you're outside of the land. How do I bring the Torah, Yisrael, into Haaretz, into the land? By coupling Torah knowledge, meaning the judgments or the justice or the laws, with simple faith. That's the land, that's Haaretz. And when a person lives in the land, it's like he has a God. Because he experiences Hashem's love, because he experiences Hashem's compassion. This is what I was missing for all those years after I became Baal Tshuva. I was busy learning Yom V'Layla, everything that I could find. Everything in Jewish law, everything in oral law, everything in the written Torah, everything, even the Chassidut and Kabbalah. And yet, I felt tremendous constriction, even maybe more so than before I became religious. But then all of a sudden, when I had reached a complete state of bitul, that I finally admitted in my late 20s that I do not create reality, that I do not cause the events that take place in my life, that I can't fix my relationships, I can't rectify mistakes, I can't repair damage, I can't do that. And it's okay. But Hashem can. And even before I really 100% believed it, but because I had run out of options, I finally lived as if Hashem does that, could do that. I lived with the daughter. I lived with the princess. And I started talking to Hashem for at least an hour a day. I started relating to Hashem as if He was the creator and the orchestrator of every aspect of my life. I didn't just learn about it. I didn't just talk about it. I didn't just teach about it. I actually lived like it. And when I started to live like it, I started to experience it. Mamish. So what happened? What was the change? And the answer was that when I was hanging out with the 6 sons, I only experienced Mida Keneged Mida. I only experienced Hashem's justice. And therefore I didn't get to experience His love for me. But then as soon as I realized through the obstacles and the barriers of my life, which is the paradox of the benefit, the good of the challenges of our life, that to bring us to a state of bitul, to help us to realize that we can't heal, we can't rectify, we can't fix. Only Hashem can. And when a person starts to live with that reality, which can only be done through simple faith, living with Hashem like He's my Abba, and my Abba happens to run everything in my life, my work, my relationship with my husband or wife, how my kids turn out, what schools they go to, health issues, lack of health issues, peace with brothers and sisters, everything in my life. I stopped attributing it to nature and I started attributing it all to Hashem. Then you have moved into relating to Hashem like the princess and not like the sons. And then once I do that, I open up the possibility that Hashem can show me compassion. Because now I have stopped hanging out on the stars and I have begun to hang out on the moon. And the moon has the benefit of receiving the light of the sun, whereas the stars don't. And now that I get to receive the light of the sun, which is Hashem's love, now I get to experience it. But the key is by nullifying my preconceived notion and understanding of how life works and giving it up to Hashem, turning off my star-like qualities, which I'm born with, and moving into my moon-like qualities, which is at the core of who I am, which is at the core of my Jewish neshama, my Yiddish neshuma, my Yiddish soul. And through this, I'm able to experience Hashem's love, His compassion, His chokhmah, the light which heals, the light which transforms, the light which traverses all barriers and obstacles, breaks, like the Midrash says, love breaks all barriers. Love breaks all barriers, but love can only be experienced by the moon, because the moon is the only vessel which is capable of receiving Hashem's love, because Hashem's love is infinite. It's too intense for us to experience, right? When the stars experience that light, they break. The only thing that can experience this light is the light of the moon, is the daughter. So these two hanhagas, these two ways that Hashem operates in existence. First one is midat hadin. This is like the sons. Shehem bechinat midot. This is the concept of those 6 lower midot: chesed, gevur, tiferet, netzach, hod, yesod. Va'alken b'midah she'adam oded modedim olo. And the way in which a person acts, that's the way he is related to. This is all the concept of the sons. But then there's a second way that Hashem operates. Hi hanhagat habat. This is the hanhaga of the daughter. That in the time when a person has strong, simple faith in Hashem, then Hashem has compassion on him and supports him and assists him. Even though that a person does not merit it, even though a person has not yet become a tzaddik, he hasn't yet achieved the level of his forefathers. He lives in 2022 and he's barraged by a million different obstacles that people have never even heard of or known of or thought of before. He still doesn't eat in a way which is fitting a human being. He still doesn't pray with kavana or with fire. He still doesn't learn Torah yom v'layla. He still gets into arguments with his spouse. He still makes mistakes with his kids. He is a normal human being. He's not fitting according to his qualities that he operates with to receive this infinite love, this infinite light of God. But that's only at the level of the sons. But if that same person stops being sophisticated, stops thinking that he controls his own life, stops thinking that people, places, and things are the causes of the events in his life, and he moves back into the mode of what he was like as a little child, but before he started to experience his parents fighting, before he started to experience bullying, before he got exposed to the darkness of the world. And if you see that little child when his parents come home, how they light up, and how as soon as the kid leaves, he's not scared that his Abba or his Ima's not there when he comes back. He knows they're going to be back. Not because he studied it, not because he learned it in university, not because it's proven scientifically, but because he knows that every single time he comes back to the living room, his Abba or his Ima's there. Every time he goes out to play with his friends and he comes back, his parents are there. Every time he goes out and he's hungry and he comes back, there's food for him, right? He doesn't have to investigate this. He doesn't have to, he just believes it. He believes it so much that he knows it. But because he believes it so intensely, he gets to experience it in a deeper way, okay? So this is what Rabbi Nachman is trying to bring us to the level of relating to Hashem like the daughter and not like the sons. Because through the sons, whatever you give, you get. And it's very difficult. What we're going to learn in a moment is that even if you want to progress to the level that you give sufficiently to receive what you're looking for, you have so many barriers, both both within yourself, within your family, within your system, within your society, in addition to all your spiritual barriers that are personal to you. And then add that to all the spiritual barriers which are unique to our generation, and we actually don't have a shot. You don't even have a shot at the level of the sons. But the benefit of this is it forces everyone to have to reorient and to experience Hashem in some ways, like even big Talmidei Chachamim have not been able to experience. That is like children. This is the Geula. Rabbi Nachman once said that it's going to be the simple Jews who say Tehillim every day. They're going to be the ones who crown the Mashiach. And what was mashma? What was implicit in that statement? That Jews who are not simple Jews, they're not straightforward, they're not unpretentious. Their belief in Hashem is not based on some quantifiable knowledge that they examined and they utilize Western models of thinking in order to come to deep spiritual beliefs. But those people who believe like a child believes in their parents, when they have good parents, that they're going to be there for them, that they love them, they're going to take care of them. They operate and they relate to him like a child with their parents, not like a person with his coworker. Someone he wants a better job from, so I dress up in a nicer suit, and I wear a nicer hat, and I change my clothes, I change my outfit, but inside I'm exactly the same. Hashem doesn't want that. Like a kid, like a child again. Those people are going to crown the Mashiach. This is also the secret of why Rabbi Nachman said that when the Mashiach comes, everyone is going to lose their das. People are going to be, their minds are going to be jumbled because it's not who they expected it to be. It's going to be like a whirlwind. And he said that the majority of people, when the Mashiach comes, they're going to be flabbergasted. Not who they thought. But he said that my chasidim are going to have yeshuv das. They're going to have tranquility of mind when they experience the Mashiach. Why? Because he said they've been drinking this wine for a long time. What does it mean simply? Because all of Rabbi Nachman's disciples have stopped relating to Hashem like the sons, and because they relate to Hashem like the daughter. As a result of that, when the Mashiach comes, it's not going to be overwhelming for them. It's not going to be something crazy, something they never could possibly fathom. Because the Mashiach is going to be simple. Because this Mashiach is going to be unsophisticated. He's going to be unpretentious. He's going to be simple like Hashem. And a person can only relate to another if he shares the quality that they have. And we know that when did pretentiousness come into the world? When did sophistication come into the world? It came with the Nachash. The first thing it says about the Nachash, this primordial force of negativity, the snake, that obviously we know is not a snake like we experience now. It's some type of very deep, very intense, spiritual, negative root force. And this Nachash, it says that he was cunning, he was sophisticated, he was pretentious. This is what he introduced to the world. And only after the Adam and Chava started hanging out with the Nachash did they realize they didn't have clothes on. But before this, they weren't even paying attention to their clothes. They were just living with Hashem like little kids. Bezrat Hashem, we're going to continue this lesson moving forward. And I'm going to put out points and to take from this as well as tefillahs to pray from this.